right, thanks for joining us for the AMP Music Summit Brands and Music panel. We're excited to have three leaders in the space covering all different areas of the relationship between music and brands. Let's start off with Chris Monaco, is Managing Director International and Global Music Lead at Rogers & Cowan PMK, which is a leading global PR and marketing agency. Good to have you here, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Organizing this around my time zone. Much appreciated.
Yeah, Chris is joining us from London, so officially making our conference global.
We're global, baby.
We have a couple speakers joining us from outside the U.S. We've also got Steve Levy, who's Chief Marketing Officer at Virgin Fests, which has or had a festival scheduled for June in Los Angeles. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Steve is also a legend in dance music as a founder of Moonshine and Over America, and a longtime friend and colleague. Thank you, Steve, for being here.
Thanks for having me. Unfortunately, I'm not in London because I hear the weather's really good and it's a great place to be when the weather's good. But joining you from Hollywood Hills, if you hear some badly behaved dogs in the background, that's because we're safer at home right now.
That's right. And last but not least, we have Jeff Castelaz, who's giving us something to look at, the beautiful Griffith Observatory in the background. Jeff is founder of Cast Management, who, among other people, handles Dropkick Murphys, Violent Femmes, Blues Traveler, Candlebox, and is also the founder of the Pavlov Foundation, which raises money for kids with cancer and does important work and hosts a big cycling fundraiser every year. And so we see Jeff on his bike right now, staying true to the game. Jeff, thank you for being here.
Likewise. So
I'm really excited to have people from kind of different sides of this equation. For anyone that knows me, this is an important conversation. I've spent 20 plus years helping brands make investments in music and culture and building campaigns around those relationships. And, I think I'm concerned with kind of how those relationships are evolving right now, this year and beyond. And I'm really interested in digging into your perspectives on this at all. So, I want to start with a quote that I heard last month, which has really stuck with me, which is that if you still think you're in the same business you were in back in February, you're in big trouble. So let's open with that. And maybe I'm going to put this to all of you. Tell me, what business are you in May and for the rest of this year and beyond? And how are things changing for you personally and in your business?
I'll go. This is Jeff. I mean, basically within the span of 1 week, we had to dismantle, management. If you're doing it, you're planning, year and a half, 2.5 years in advance with every client. And, let's say we had to dismantle 2 years worth of planning, deal making, execution of show announces and tour announces, marketing tours and shows. And we had to pull down or put shows into postponement. We rescheduled some things, which clearly it became obvious that was a joke. And, we all found, everyone in my office and I found that we were working 10 times harder than usual, 10 times more than usual, to basically reverse making any money. And so from April 1st to the end of this year, as far as we can see, our revenue has gone down 97%. And that's math I actually did. So it's been, there is a silver lining-ish, which I'll get to later, but it's been, it feels like a year worth of therapy and emotional and intellectual, sort of processing has happened in the past, whatever it's been, 6 weeks. So that's my little snapshot.
Yeah, thanks.
So I actually am in a different business than I was in February because crazily enough, I switched roles. I was over at Insomniac Events, which produces some of the biggest festivals in the world. We had an amazing run, selling out pretty much everything over the course of the last year. With EDC Las Vegas sold out at 150K plus tickets. We, at the beginning of first week of March, we were coming up on Beyond Wonderland Festival, which was scheduled to happen the last week of March with 65,000 tickets sold. We had Rolling Loud coming up beginning of May with 90,000 tickets sold. I had the good fortune of being offered a role over at Virgin in their new festival business as their CMO. So I managed to kind of step out right when things were not looking so hot, and went from kind of probably being in a situation where we were, as you said, Jeff, unraveling a whole bunch of stuff. And figuring out the messaging on that, and then coming into a fairly clean slate here over with Virgin. But that being said, I've been involved in some of the conversations over at Insomniac and some of the brand conversations, which we can speak to a bit later. And yes, it's a whole new world. I'm lucky enough to be in a situation with a business that we've got time to plan, and that's kind of what we're doing. And we're looking at a very long view. We've kind of just forgotten about 2020. It's not even in front of us as far as we're concerned. So that's how that's really changed for me.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, Josh, Josh and I talk about this. It's a great quote. It really is. The immediacy of change. Change for anybody, personally, professionally, even in your hobbies, change is excruciatingly difficult, even if you want it. When you don't want it, we're going through that right now. And if we are advising, from our side, from the brand strategy side, our clients, global, some rather large, most large. We have to advise them on what's happening in the landscape. And the landscape changed about a month ago, was changing by the hour. And if we're still thinking about what they and their consumers are going to need the same way we were 60 days ago, even tomorrow, we're doing them a disservice. So it's almost like juggling the chainsaw and the flaming bowling ball and the machete right now in a lot of ways. And trying to identify how we are going to be acting in a very reactive environment and advising our clients about what they should be doing with their current entitlements. Some are multi-year deals. Grammys, the Brit Awards, festivals, AG, Live Nation, talent, what have you. And you got to read the tea leaves, got to base it on some relationships. You got to base it on hard-learned lessons from the past and start to move on a parallel path. Our business, Rogers & Cowan PMK, music division, and also help nudge our clients and their business in what's next. It's fun. Yes. We're exploring a lot of new areas. Challenging. Yes. Is it bringing us together in different ways? Absolutely. There actually really has been a ton of consensus with individuals and teams, internally and externally with our clients, about how we are going to move forward together. And that's been pretty reassuring. Back to your quote, Josh. It is an eye-opener. It really is. I think it's kind of funny how that will apply on a fluid timeline over the next 12, 18, 24 months, that you'll have to keep reminding yourselves. We will, at least I will, remind myself that that's something I need to come back and check myself on. That will it continue to evolve? Yes. Do we know the core of our business? Absolutely, 100%. Can we go back and do things that were proven before? Absolutely. What's next? We're all pushing on that envelope right now and trying to figure it out.
Sure. I want to dig into some of those conversations a little bit, because you all kind of said a bit of the same thing, which is that, big business, Virgin, the clients that you work with, Chris, Jeff, even your business, right? You plan far in advance, right? And I'm in my work with brands, what they want is stability, predictability, things they can, put on a calendar for next year and budget against and all that. And at the same time, we're in this time of kind of unprecedented rate of change. Jeff, I'm sure you're saying with the fans of some of your bands that, things are changing on a daily basis. And you guys did something with Dropkick Murphys with the Streaming Up from Boston live stream, right? Where they performed on St. Patrick's Day from a club with no audience, right? Which was I'm sure a bit of a quick pivot for them. So I'd love to kind of talk about, that project and how that happened, but also in the bigger picture for all three of you, sort of how are you balancing the long view, as you said, Steve, with these changes that are happening on a day-to-day basis and the relationship that is out there with fans who want to hear from their favorite festivals or their favorite artists or any of that?
I guess the Dropkick Murphys stream that we did, it was from a soundstage in Boston. We were lucky to have done a rehearsal there. We had sold out the Wynn Encore Casino up in Boston as one of our Boston hometown shows that the band has done for 24 years. I guess I should say for 23 years. And we were doing the band's first ever In the Round at the Wynn. So we rehearsed at this soundstage a few days before the live stream. And when it became clear that, as each hour went by, leading up to the day where we postponed those shows, we were literally like, we have to do this. We don't cancel shows ever. To maybe we should only allow half the people in and then just play more shows. We went through all the spectrum.
Yeah.
And then when we finally had to throw in the towel and move them to September, we did it at the last minute, like 2 days out of the 5-day run. And we put together the live stream idea on a lark. Ken Casey, the leader of the band, he and I were talking on the phone, which at that point we were doing 50 times a day. And one of us said, hey, we should do a live stream from that place. They have all the cameras. It turns out that it belongs to a sound and light production company that does tours. And they had just built all this video capacity, and we put it together. We got one sponsor, a company out of Boston called PEGA, P-E-G-A. They loved it because, they're a Cambridge born and bred company. The Dropkicks are obviously Boston born and bred. And, it just worked out. And, we got so much press around the world, everything from, The Guardian and even the London Times to CBS Saturday Morning. We just had a Wall Street Journal article that came out last week, and the headline kind of said it all. It said, Dropkick Murphys played to 10 million fans on a live stream is just the new model. And, by the way, the number is more like 19 million as we stand here.
Wow.
But it was 10 million sort of in the first 24 hours. So it's still really cool. And I want to point out the Dropkick Murphys have never had a radio hit or a video hit,
Sure.
but they've sold almost 8 million records, mostly on their own label. And the reason I say that is because like our good friends, the Foo Fighters or Pearl Jam or whatever, of course they'd have that many viewers or more because they're fucking the Foo Fighters, you know? But it just proves what can be done even with a band that's never had traditional hits. People are hungry, and people will go to where their favorite artists are, electronic, rock and roll, pop, I don't care what it is. And by the way, we did it for free. So it was scary. We had no idea if we could do it. We had no idea if there'd be glitches and it would be embarrassing. But it turned out great. And we're about to announce another one that's going to be beyond epic, just in terms of even where it's happening. So that's my statement on all that.
That's great. That's great. Steve, what about you? You know, similar to what Jeff's talking about, dance music is largely a touring business, right? The artists, the labels that operate in that space really rely on the touring business to drive all that, and and the festivals certainly. So again, back to kind of what you were saying earlier, how are you balancing the long view of what it means to build the Virgin brand over time to kind of what's happening inside the culture and the rapid changes on almost a daily basis?
I'm just kind of sticking with kind of tried and true methods that, we've really been, we stick to anyway, which is we obviously need to find a way of connecting with the audience. Right now, live streaming video is a good way. Working on a couple of other things. We don't know what the future is, so probably we should be tapping into the heritage from a content standpoint, and playing to kind of the good vibes and stuff like that. I don't have all the answers yet because at the moment, we just like I said, I'm lucky enough where I've got the luxury of some time to play with. But we have a festival planned for the first week of June right now, and right now we're going ahead with it.
Really?
Are you on sale?
We're still on sale.
Yeah.
How's it look? I'm putting you on the spot, but like,
it's still on sale.
It's on sale.
It's on sale.
All right. You're still in the game. I love it. No, I love it. You're still in the game.
Sold differently, and our view is if we get to throw a party, we'll throw a big party, and we'll be the first party to get thrown. And if we're not, we won't. So,
can you talk about, and obviously, whatever's kind of confidential, we'll excuse, but can you talk about the nature of the conversations with sponsors?
Yeah. So, and those conversations were starting while I was still back at Insomniac. As I said, we were coming up on a festival at the end of March that the COVID situation was rapidly gaining momentum in the end of February. And what happened was there were sponsors who were supposed to be part of those festivals, major brands, and I'm not going to go into who they were. And they've already made commitments from a point of view of making payments, etc. And all they wanted was they just didn't want to show up, and they didn't want to be a part of it. So they pulled out. They didn't pull their money out. The conversations similar with Virgin Fest as well. So moving forward, obviously, no one's making any plans. Sure. Everyone's sitting on the fence, and because no one knows when things are going to start up yet.
Absolutely. So, Chris, in your conversations with your clients, take us inside those a little bit, and what is the balance, I guess, between the sort of long range planning that you're expected to bring versus kind of what's happening in music and culture now that brands either want to or don't want to participate in?
Yeah. It's a brave new day, really, in a lot of respects. we typically have multi-year entitlements with our clients and parts of the industry, right?
Yeah.
And those are lasting partnerships. So when you're in, it really is a partnership, and many of those that would be coming up this year, and we'd be, looking at in first half 2021, it's not about the money. It's about what's happening across the industry. And are we still going to be able to perform in the same ways? Mm-hmm. In some instances, not knowing really does make it harder to anticipate what to do. Like, what is the pivot? It's not about the money. We made a deal. There's enormous value in that deal. We've been together for a long time.
Right.
Okay. But not knowing what's going to happen makes the pivot a little bit harder to anticipate. On the other side of our business, from the Octagon side in the sports world, we're learning a lot of lessons out of, the Olympics, Champions League, FIFA, NFL, Major League Baseball, Premier League, right? It is very crazy in some places. The words force majeure have taken on a whole different meaning, right?
Yeah.
The pivot's about a partnership when it comes to entitlements and knowing that you're in it, right? It's like Steve said, look, we're not pulling our money out. We're just not going to be there. When you're back on your feet, we're back in with you. And what that looks like, we'll know eventually. How long will that last? If you want to talk about it from a commercial perspective, thankfully we're a publicly traded company, IPG. How long will that sentiment last is unknown. It really is. It needs to be keeping on that one, but that's where it is.
I'm having the same experience from the management point of view in that, when this first started going down, band members, of course, were bringing up force majeure and act of God and all this stuff in terms of like, hey, those promoters can't leave. And obviously what I've heard from
I think Jeff just hit the crossfader.
Hey, Jeff,
agents.
We're having trouble hearing you. Do you mind saying that part?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you sound great now.
Okay, I'm not going to move. Force majeure is great and everything from our point of view, and we heard that a lot from our clients at first. But the reality is we need our promoters to be healthy, especially our local and regional promoters. And we need Live Nation and AEG to be healthy too. I mean, let's face it. Everybody needs everybody to be healthy because this will end. It will get better. The world will figure it out. And we don't want to turn around and say, you know what? You were a real a-hole to us. I mean, we just don't need that. And at the end of the day, music, I know that we all branch out into other tangential things, but music we're supposed to be the people who advocate for people who are expressing their pain, their agony, their joy, so that the rest of us can figure out who we are and how we feel. So let's not be jerks in a time of great worldly need. That's just been my take on it,
Well, that's kind of business as usual, right? In the music business. So can't we all just come together and get through this?
I think the business as usual could be a little bit more cutthroat than that, but I think this is an inflection point for not just for our business, but for each individual person. It's like, how do I want to act? By the way, every business manager that I'm friends with or that I work with, they're all really up to their wits' end. They're all crispy from dealing with the the payroll protection program.
Sure.
And no business manager I know is just chilling. They're really stressed. And as the weeks go on, they're getting more and more crispy. So those are the people that I feel like, okay, I need to be of service to them and instead of calling a business manager about what did we spend on orange juice in the dressing rooms last year for client X, let's just figure it out ourselves from looking at settlements, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think unfortunately there's a few people who still haven't got the memo. No, I mean, I'm being serious. I just seeing how some organizations are still acting. I think that they're, and also kind of behind the scenes, some, maybe it's improving, but at least in the last month, there's definitely been, I've seen and felt that people have kind of put people to the wall still, which is, to your point, Jeff, people are going to remember it. And our credo as a business, as Virgin, and it always has been, is kind of all about the people. And I think it's important moving forward to continue with that attitude, because people are going to remember.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've gotten more texts, emails, calls from my friends, like just at Warner Music Group where I used to work when I ran Electro Records, and people going like, man, like all the managers that I know and agents, like, you guys are really ass out. And no offense to anyone, but you know, if I'm an executive at a big agency, I probably still have a paycheck, but you know, I pay myself at the end of the year. Like, I know what I made the last week of every year, except this year I know that I'm going to have a negative. Yeah. And so, you know, again, I am normally the biggest, you know, sassy mouth fool around, but right now I'm just saying, you know, everybody, we're all in this together, you know, and, you know, it's a good time to make friends instead of enemies, and to bring, to be like the prayer of St. Francis, to bring clarity where there's chaos, you know, and, that's what I'm trying to do. I usually just yell at people when I'm on my bike and I haven't found a record executive or a promoter who's fucking pissed me off on the bike.
I love it.
So maybe give us.
By the way, Steve, I figured out how we know each other. Steve, I used to manage Uber Zone back when I worked for Richard Bishop in like 2000 and 2003. Remember those days, man?
If I remembered it, I wasn't there.
Yeah, I know. Fair enough.
Yeah, okay, I remember. Yeah.
Nice. Shout out to Richard Vision.
I still live across the street from Richard's house. So
I remember those days. Yeah.
Amazing. So if you don't mind, you know, talk us through, all of you, a little bit of the how, right? So you're bringing up a really important point, which is that music is an ecosystem, and it's not only about preserving your own business, which obviously is important, but you need healthy partners, right? On all sides. And so there's, whether it's happening yet, it's going to, some decisions about what bills get paid, what contracts get renegotiated, how, I would say, you know, how the risk and the pain gets shared. And so, you know, for those of us who've been successful in business, it's not without a certain amount of self-preservation, but also, I think, without, you know, as you guys are pointing to, also a bit of the bigger picture. So can you give us, you know, other specifics that come to mind about how you're thinking about that, or how you're navigating any of those conversations and decisions?
I think, and this is just kind of an overall view, I think if anyone's making a decision right now based on money, they're going to be making the wrong decision. I think I've been through a couple of these, not at this level, but, you know, I was there at 9/11 and subsequently when the music business really kind of crashed around our years, when the kids stopped paying for the shiny silver discs. I was in the publishing and advertising business in 2007, 2008, when basically every major advertiser sat on their hands for 2 years. So I've kind of been through it again. And so I think that whenever I made a decision that was based on money, it was usually the wrong decision. And I think that holds true for now. I think everyone's got to make the decisions based on kind of what's best overall. So speaking, if you're talking about deal making or force majeure or something like that, yes, force majeure is this great word that a lot of people can stand behind, but ultimately, I think if people just get around the table and hash stuff out, we're going to have a better outcome on things. And I think we all have to realize that at this point in time, that the whole community's in this. The whole world is in this. So we've got to move forward with that in mind.
Yeah, Steve, you actually raise a great point. We're all in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
Moving in the relatively same direction. This is no one's really fault, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there does need to be some level of a reset in a lot of places. And, not to anyone's fault whatsoever, but the pricing balloon has been inflated. I sit on the buyer side now. Previously, I've been on the selling side, in previous iterations of my career. I'm on the buying side now. And everyone is going to have to recognize the value of where we are. And that if you're thinking about pricing in yesterday's terms, you're going to be out of business in 2 months, right?
Yeah.
And that's reciprocity. And that's, you talk about the industry, we're all in it together. It's like the industry side, right? But it also applies to, the brand world, Fortune 50, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, that in some ways have been a benefactor to the music business and a lot of parts of entertainment, right? But if the selling side continues to view the buying side as this blank check, things will come to an arboreal halt because everybody's feeling it the same way, like you said, right? Mm-hmm. And this comes back to your point, Josh, about yesterday's thinking and tomorrow's planning, right? And we are going through that right now in a lot of places, right? And the good news is no one's written the rule book on this, so we can all get around the table and talk about what the next steps are, whether that be for the next 12 months, 16 months, 24 months, who knows? There is a lot of optimism in taking that approach, that the people that are making the deals now are actually crafting what tomorrow's industry is going to look like.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. Who, on the upside, who are you seeing? Name names or not, totally your call. But what are you seeing out there from brands, from sponsors, from corporate partners that you think they're making the right moves that are beneficial maybe to their own brands as well as to the culture and the partners?
Well,
Well, what I'm seeing, is it okay?
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff. No,
is it
really.
okay if I jump in, or did someone else?
Yeah, go on.
What I'm seeing is, and my scope is widening. I mean, doing brand deals with the artists that I manage, I either had some artists who weren't into that because it just wasn't part of their ethos. Mm-hmm. But perhaps some of those artists are the artists who have the strongest value proposition for a brand. And as the world turned overnight for these artists, each individual member of a band or two that I managed was like, you know what, I'd be open to talking about doing a deal of some sort with a brand as long as they have good ethics and they're not dirty, so to speak, if they're a clean brand.
Sure. And
we all know what that means, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously that's a different question for each band. Some bands really care about what's your carbon footprint. Other bands, they don't want to deal with alcohol companies or cigarette companies. Some bands are like, shit, bring that on. We don't care. But what I've found is that I lean on the very proactive. I don't really do decks, but I'll create an email with my team of what are the deliverables we can give to brand X in exchange for this money that we're asking. We always include a charity component paid directly to a charity of our suggestion, because that's important to all of our clients. And that also like really, it's like a little cherry on top of the ask, I think, for the brands, you know, and it makes us all be reminded that we're human. One brand that I've been working with extensively, of course, there's someone backing up. I'm so sorry, guys. That's the Brinks truck backing up to me. Hold on.
I think he's just proving that's not a static background. It's actually real. Yeah.
Exactly. Look. Okay, so there's one brand that we're working with, and I'm going to keep it very black and white because that's the polite thing to do. Yeah. Where it's a multi-year deal, and I asked them, look, I grew up in my dad's corner bar in Milwaukee, watching my dad wheel and deal with people 24 hours a day. So I have this ability to bring up things that, if I was off my game, they might sound crazy, but when I'm on my game, it's like people could just laugh if they don't want to do it. But I asked these guys, listen, my client that you love so much that we're signing this deal for is unemployed basically. And they're paying their crew. Like all of our clients are paying their crews something to help people out. And because, we work with all veteran blue chip bands, right? They all have crews. Some of them have crews for 20 years or crew members.
Right.
And I just said, look, it's a 3-year deal. Would you mind paying us on signature for all 3 years or some portion? And the guy I was dealing with is the CMO. And he just said yeah, you know what? I love these guys. They've been great to me. They've delivered and then some for what you guys said they would do for us. Let me talk to my CEO and I'll come back to you. He came back to me that day and said, no problem. So that's the kind of thing, I'm not going to get that from everybody.
Of course.
But that's the kind of thing that blew my mind from a publicly traded company where they could help us out. And they're not, let me just put it this way, they're not a soft drink company. They're not a lifestyle brand. So there's far from being vibey, hipsters as you could ever imagine. And I'm effing grateful for that. And I'm going to send these people a special gift to commemorate their niceness to us, because just that one deal can help keep this client and their crew afloat for a very good chunk of time. So,
I mean, I love that story because it really illustrates two things that have been important to me my entire career. And one is you have to always be a good partner and don't go into a partnership unless you can deliver. And I think that's sometimes been hard on the music or the talent side of things. As Chris mentioned, there's an attitude of treating corporate partners as if they're blank checks. And the truth is that there's human beings on the other side of that who care very much about their relationship to culture and music. And then the second is ask. Right? Those guys could have said no, but they're not going to say yes if you don't ask, and that's a big part of it.
Even if someone comes in and goes look, we thought about it, we'll do it, but we need X, Y, and Z additional deliverables. I mean,
sure.
I guess what I'm saying about a band's brand or even a promoter's brand with a festival or what have you, an actor's brand, is that a lot of the stuff that one is delivering to a brand, let's face it, it ain't that hard to go and say, oh, we'll do an additional 5 social posts, or we'll go into one of your outlets. I'm making this up. Let's say it's Starbucks. We'll go in and do a thing. The fucking guy goes to Starbucks 8 times a day anyway, right? And, we'll go and do some real organic interaction with your brand. That it's not that hard to add that to the list. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny. It's funny you raise the little things, right? And the extras, because we find ourselves and people on our music team globally. I see the deals and I see the pain they go through in negotiating with the agents. I don't know why sometimes we have to negotiate with the agents. Better negotiate with management, but You stopped recording that, right, Josh? All right. We'll pick it up right here. You know, it really is changing the paradigm right now, that everybody does have to be a little less precious about the things that are on the table. And this is how the business is going to evolve. And it's funny. We're going to publish a white paper soon, like the next 3-4 days.
You want to read it now?
No.
Can you put it on the screen? Can you share us? Can you share?
Let me share it right now. But
available as a
know, the philosophy, the area that we've been in for such a long time has really been based around experiential.
Yeah.
And how brands engage the event-based world. And the irony of that is it's not really a music strategy. A music strategy really comes to life when the artist and the music is involved. And selfishly, I'm kind of wringing my hands at this scenario that we're in right now, because it feels like the music's actually going to be closer to what brands want because of the things that they can't have. And that was yesterday's business. And that's when the live business rights itself and it comes back, we're going to be back in that business, no doubt. No one knows what that timetable is. Right now, we're actually moving back towards what was the endorsement age of the 80s and the 90s, where, you know, I hate to like kind of date myself, but we're talking like Michael Jackson, Pepsi, right? You know, it's
right.
We're getting there, and everyone.
So you're going to pay some guy to set his hair on fire?
Well, that wasn't paid. That was one of the little things. It just happened, right?
Now we're really dating ourselves, right?
Yeah, but even like even Les Paul, Mary Ford, who had one of the biggest, you know, variety shows in the history of TV that most people don't remember, was sponsored. And, you know, they were doing incredible business. And by the way, Les Paul owned the Masters.
He's an absolute baller. I think the direction that I'm heading with this is that we're going to start exploring ways to get into deeper relationships with talent and those that govern their IP. And that's going to be an evolved form of what I'm coining as the next endorsement age. And we're going to go deeper with talent than ever before. And it's going to be about the music. It's going to be about their creativity. It's going to be about their passion projects. It's going to be about their charities. It's going to be about what they're seeing for the next 2 years, not just about the next release, right? It's not on a clock anymore. There isn't a cycle. And when the live business really does come back on, it's going to, like, for lack of a better term, you know, let's hit the turbo switch. Because you're going to build these deep relationships with talent. And when they go back out on the road, all the little things that everyone was so precious about before are just going to come with. And it's going to make these relationships, these partnerships, these deals even more meaningful if done for the right reason. That's a whole different topic, right?
Sure.
But if done for the right reason.
I mean, that's a really interesting perspective. And Chris, I know you and I have been having an ongoing dialogue about this. And Steve, you brought up, you know, thing I went through in 2007-8 when, you know, all the brands that were investing in the space all of a sudden decided to sit on their hands and their money.
And I mean, that was a crazy time. I remember talking to one of my guys at Nike, and it was probably May of 2008. Maybe it was May of 2008, maybe 2009. Maybe I'm confusing the years, but I said, you know, you haven't advertised with us since like last August. And the guy looked and he just said, we haven't advertised with anyone.
Right.
So a brand like Nike had sat out of the market for like 8 months, and that was one of many. And I think probably, if anything, they did themselves a disservice, because then they had to play catch up. So kind of what's the move right now? It's not like Red Bull isn't selling energy drinks right now. It's not like Heinz isn't selling ketchup.
Mm-hmm.
So where is all the money going to go that's being sitting on the sidelines right now? Are we as festival promoters and producers going to benefit from that? Are there opportunities that are going to come? I mean, I'd love to ask Chris where his head's at, and then Jeff and I can, figure out how to get out of it. So,
I just want to jump in and say, like, yes to everything. I was completely unaware of 2008, 2009, because that's right when my son Pablo was in cancer treatment. My label Danger Bird that I founded, we kind of hit the rocks after the recession. And I wasn't prepared for it, obviously, because my head wasn't in the game. However, the interesting thing about the past 12 years is that now so much more power is in the artist's hands. And by artists, I could even mean actors, because I know Rogers and Cowan deals with everybody, because of social networks, right? We were still in the one-to-many advertising world where publications, there's that guy backing up the Brinks truck again. The record labels, the video channels, radio stations, everybody else held the power. And now the artists can just go on this thing that we're all talking into and talk directly to their fans, and the brands will pay for that. And, every band, every individual artist that has their own socials, they're their own TV network. And that is pretty damn cool. Absolutely. And it also means that during a pandemic, when no one can leave their house, the TV station is still operating.
Right.
And, I just want to throw that in there as a difference of 2008, 2009, and the record companies. I mean, radio and video channels, like not one of us has even mentioned that on this entire chat. And by the way, that's where the artists link up with marketing PR agencies and promoters and festivals. Like everyone on this call, and managers, we all stand next to artists. We're not going away. Agents, labels, radio, video.
It's funny. It's funny you raised that, Jeff, because everyone's talking about how the entertainment business is going to follow the sports business, right? And music specifically is an anomaly relative to, global sport, because there is no governing body to the music industry. There isn't. Whether it's recorded, publishing, live, management, booking, it's a collection of independent entrepreneurial thought leaders. And some of those are the size of Universal Music, and some of those are, the size of, 3 people. But they're all supporting the music business. And when you don't have a governing body that's going to say, this is how things are going to work, they're going to have to figure it out on their own. Now, will sports come back? We've been asked that question, part of our sports practice. Yes, it will. And it will play behind closed doors, primarily because of the broadcast deals that the leagues have with the networks. Right. There's a lot of revenue there for everybody, right? So the teams will play. What is that going to do for the music business? Well, there's going to be a lot of people sitting on their couches watching baseball and hockey and basketball and football and MLS all at the same time. And brand marketers and advertisers are going to have to find a new creative gear to make their product stand out, because they're going to have eyeballs on every screen available. And one of the components of that is going to be the sonic elements of brand marketing. What's the music in your spot? And the soundbite is, I firmly believe that the era of Big Sync is going to be back.
Mm.
And people are going to be leveraging music in different ways. And artists and bands will be less precious about licensing their music to advertisers and to the broadcast entities even, because it's a major form of revenue for them. Let's just be honest about it. They're not out on the road. Their IP is sitting there static. And when they were out on tour, they could be precious about certain things, but now they're not playing as much as they would like to. And they could continue to do their Instagram performances from their studio, their living room, which is great. We all love it. We all need it. But there's going to be a new era of how music will be used relative to brands. And I firmly believe that there will be a resurgence of this music involvement that we saw years ago. And basically the sync is back.
Yeah. So can we talk about something real quick? And it's a conversation I've had. How crazy is it that literally overnight revenue from music went to being in the hands of the live business to now it's in the hands of the recorded business? I mean, literally overnight. And from, a point, like, I was in the recorded business, I'm now in the live business, I've been in both sides, and just we've been talking about the fact that literally 2019-20 was the inflection year anyway for streaming and revenue in streaming. But at the same time, for the last 10 years, most of the money's been in live, and literally over fucking night, the live business went away and the recorded business came back.
Yeah.
Crazy. Crazy.
Part of survival, and a lot of artists, by definition, not all artists, because they're contrived.
Hey Jeff, we're losing
Certainly.
your audio again.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Waking up a bit.
Can you hear? Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of our people who, if they hadn't been doing music when they were younger and hadn't kept doing it, they would have, proverbial sense, the spiritual sense, they would have died, right? Some artists have to do this.
Yeah.
And those people are survivors, I mean, look, the EDM world, back when you and your partner were doing it, Steve, you guys were pioneers, and people were, all of your artists were entrepreneurs, as far as I could tell, and way more than rock bands. But some rock bands, particularly in the punk area, they're survivors, they're entrepreneurs, and they're going to think very quickly on their feet, very quickly. And also, the first thing I pointed out to all my clients is let's go and do sponsorships. Let's figure out, can we do a new we go and, do an admin deal on your masters. I mean, none of my clients have record deals anymore. They all have their own labels in some form. And everybody's answer is yes, let's go and do the study. Let's get the financials together. And I pointed out to all of them, by the way, your margin on touring, when you really look at it, it's X%. Someone who's making $5 million on a European festival tour, we all know what they're making. It's 45%, 39%. You got to leave all these taxes behind. It's not like you're bringing home $5 million. So sponsorships and all this stuff is what I would call pure cash flow. And you only have a management commission on it. You don't have an agency commission on it, unless your agent brought you the sponsorship. So that's something else I want to bring in, is from a manager's point of view, is clean cash flow.
No, I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Go for
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry. No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think you're all bringing up really important points, and one of the things I take from this is, Chris, you mentioned, people are going to be sitting on their couches, they're watching sports, or in a lot of cases, they're going to be watching live streams. I think there's no, I mean, it's both an amazing time, as you said, Jeff, that every artist owns a TV station that they can bring into our homes. At the same time, sitting on your couch watching the Dropkick Murphys is not the same. It's never going to be the same as being in a bar or a club watching that happen. It's never going to be the same as being at the Virgin Fest or EDC, streaming a DJ at home. And so, I think there's a reset of expectations, right? That we have these expectations for how we relate to our favorite music, and that's just maybe not going to apply this year or maybe next. And with that, I think comes the brand conversations, as brand have to figure out where the value is in those experiences.
In a lot of ways, the reset is a big part of the conversation across the industry. And actually, Steve, I empathize with your statement, but I actually kind of disagree with you. You say that, yes, on the face of it, the power is shifted from the live side to the recorded side, but it's actually still sitting with the artist. It really is. That, the artist has become, my view of what we're going through right now in the industry is really put the onus on the artist, and everyone seeing the power the artist has versus everyone who's claiming to be part of that ecosystem or a rights holder. Because you could have Chris Martin or Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello or anybody just pop up on their Instagram and just start playing. And there's zero monetization behind that.
Well, so let's
really,
to that point though.
That really sits with the artist itself.
Yeah, but
and that's at the core of it is the music. And I'd be a purist about it, but I mean, really, that's it. All right.
But you raise a very valuable point, which is like, how do you monetize all of this? And even from the artist standpoint, and all of these live streams and everything, there are very few live streams that have successfully monetized. One of them obviously being Coachella. I was involved in a lot of them early on when 7-Up came into the business, when we did Ultra and that.
Yeah.
But the reality is that that's kind of a media buying business, and there are set rates around it. And I went through looking at live stream monetization at my previous role. We're looking at it now, and the reality is it's bullshit. Unless you have a marquee property like Coachella that there just isn't anything in it. So you have to sit there and see, well, what's the value to that? And I'm sure Jeff will be able to speak to it. The value to it is in the artist's hands. It's great brand building for them. It's a great connection. And it kind of goes back to my thought, which is right now, everyone's got to be giving. No one's got to be taking. And whether it's Virgin as a brand, whether it's the Dropkick Murphys as a band, the only thing we can do getting ready for coming out of this is just to give to the audience and give to the people that we want to reach. And that's where my philosophy moving forward with what we're doing with Virgin and the properties that we've got is that for now we're giving. There's nothing that we want to take and we should be taking from our audience.
It's actually, I'd love to hear Jeff's point of view on this. There was a pretty big moment that happened about 10 days ago with Travis Scott on Fortnite. And I'm not clear if anybody got paid on that. I don't think anybody did. But you look back at the numbers on it, and they're saying it's north of 40 million people have experienced it. about 3 million in the premiere, and then they've run it extra 5 times, and I think there were a few added performances, and they're north of 40 million people. So you can imagine what Travis would get paid to go on tour and do 80 arenas around the world, or potentially what he would get paid for Coachella or some other major festivals. But if he got everyone, call it 40 million people viewed it, if you got everyone who viewed that on Fortnite to give him 25 cents, that's a pretty big payday. How much of a game changer is that?
I think it is. I think the question is, I don't know that everybody would. To me, you have to have a very, very simple payment mechanism, you know, like something like Apple Pay, where you just swipe your finger and you're done. It always shocks me when I have to spend 10 minutes filling out a payment thing on a website, you know. I literally sometimes go, fuck this, I'm out, you know. I'll go to the store and get it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's what everybody said about the Dropkicks thing. Like, shit, we should have charged, you know, if we charged 10 cents on 10 million viewers. I mean, yeah, sure. But I think free is better, and brands paying for it is better. That's what I think. It's much simpler. The big question I have is, like, how many times can a given artist do a live stream?
Right.
You know, like, you know, and obviously Travis, you know, hip hop people and pop people have a much bigger audience than rock bands.
Yeah.
And they can do lifestyle things that where it's not even involving their music. They can do all kinds of shit that rock bands really can, unless you're Dave Grohl. But
well, I think it's,
yeah. Go ahead.
I think it is really interesting, you know, in how it's going to be different from genre to genre or artist to artist. I think, you know, we've heard some other talks during the day of people saying, you know, artists have to be careful about live streaming too much, and especially right now when most of it's free, and you're sort of maybe conditioning your audience to just, you know, watch for free. And then as the year goes on and people need money, it's maybe making it harder to charge, right? I think, you know, to your point, Jeff, you know, rappers have other maybe lifestyle options at the same time. And I'm generalizing, you know, hugely, which is not fair to a lot of artists. But, you know, there's this running narrative in hip hop about how rich I am and how successful I am. And that makes it maybe really hard for them to go ask for money from fans, right? When all your videos have Lamborghinis in them. And, you know, rock bands might have a very different dynamic with their fans. Yeah. So I think all of those things are going to be tested, right? And you're going to learn. And it brings me kind of maybe to our final question, because I want to give Jeff a chance to ride home.
Dude, I'm going to have sunburn for this shit. Oh, my God.
So, you know, in closing, you know, I'd love to hear kind of, you know, what are you looking forward to when you think about the other side of this, whenever that is? I won't use the term new normal, because I think, you know, normal is always changing, and it's only in times like this when we really notice it. But you know, all of us have been in business long enough to know that the world looks nothing like it did our first day on the job. And so, but if you think about the other side of this, what are you hoping to see? How are you hoping that your business, our business, the community, and specifically the relationship with brands has changed or evolved?
Someone else go. I just wanted to open the silence, man.
I'll jump in. First of all, I want to meet the guys I work with, because I
love it.
Because as I said earlier, I started working with Virgin like literally the day after LA got shut down. So most of the team I work with I've only met over Zoom. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing is I want to stand up side stage and be in front of 30,000 people again. And that, you know, that feels a long way off at the moment.
Sure.
Shit. I'll go last if it's okay.
Yeah, there's a lot I'm looking forward to. And I certainly hope I'm still sitting in my chair in the next 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. It's the industry is evolving, right? Partner with a purpose is going to be a big mantra for us, and it's moving away from the days of a brand would just be a check and they'd make up the deficit, and the ability to right size that conversation and have our clients actually move into the music space with a purpose, as opposed to how big of a splash they could make, or how long can we make the deal, or is the event big enough to meet the stature of our brand. And to really have a purpose and a voice in music and be able to support the music industry going forward based on what's going to be good for their consumers. That I'm looking forward to. The pendulum of spend has swung over the last 30 years from the recorded side to the live side, and tech's been involved. And I actually think it's going to sit right around neutral for a while right now. And it's going to be a great time to be involved. And if brands can enter that ecosystem with a purpose, all sides of that conversation are going to see success. And I'm looking forward to that. It's going to get really busy really fast.
Nice.
I agree with what you guys said, and mine is some bunch of bullet points. One is, I learned a long time ago, I'm either regressing or progressing, right? There's either regression or evolution, and I'd much rather be on the evolution side. It's like why I started Danger Bird. I thought labels sucked, with the exception of Moonshine. And I thought I could do a little bit of a job with it. And, it turns out with the case of Fits in the Tantrums and Silver Sun Pickups, we did a good job. With the other bands, maybe we sucked or we did an okay job, but I was trying to evolve. And I think that we are in a decisive global moment. Everybody, I don't care whether you work in a farmer's market or you own a music publishing company or whatever, you're in a moment, we're all in this moment and we're all in it together. How cool is that? There's no shame in anyone's game right now, from what I can tell, which is really rare. And I'm reading the sort of, what I was told is the authoritative book about the 1917 through 1920 flu pandemic. And I think that feeling, that sentiment went over the world. We're all in this together. And certainly it defined, many generations. I will also say that in terms of rock music, so non-EDM, non-pop, non-hip-hop, there's been so much of a sort of a shared community shame about talking about money or about saying like, hey, this is how I make a living.
Yeah.
I think in rock music, indie rock, punk rock, rock, everyone's trying to look cool and pretend like they, I don't talk about business. And I forgot who made the point earlier about the Lambos and talking about wealth and all that stuff. Maybe there's a middle where everybody just gets honest about it. And you go like, yo, I'm a blue collar musician. I got to tour, or I got to stream, or I got to put out limited 7-inches because we got to make a living. We're employers. And I think rappers do a great job of that. And, I personally come from nothing. So I have no problem saying blah, blah, blah. And when I worked for Julie Greenwald at Warner Music, she had this saying. She's like, I'm an open book. I fucking tell everybody everything. I don't give a shit. And it's because Julie touched every rung on the ladder twice.
Yeah.
And again, that shared shame, and I'm calling it shame. It might not be shame, but that shared blah, blah, blah about money has just got to go away. We all make a living here, and most of us make an okay living. And there's no reason to be shameful about that. The other thing is that, you know, man, I'm grateful for my favorite bands, my favorite songs. I'm grateful to have seen a bunch of people on the Lady Gaga. I believe Lady Gaga put together that one, was it called One World?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, seeing Eddie Vedder in his home playing a song on his pump organ, like, I just go like, wow, I'm really grateful for my favorite artists because they are the soundtrack to my life. And these people say the things that I don't know how to say for myself a lot of the time. And, you know, this is not just fun and games. Like, music for me, my favorite authors, my favorite actors and directors, they've been lifesavers for me. And I want to stand up and say, I'm fucking lucky to have my job helping people. And I'm lucky to have some favorite artists. And, you know, we're all lucky to be alive in this moment, as far as I can tell.
That's a great note to end on. Chris, Steve, Jeff, really appreciate all of you making time for this and sharing your words of wisdom. We are going to be taking questions that we're sort of still figuring out how to get those in, but we'll make those available to you if you want to hear what people thought or questions they had. And thanks again, Jeff. We appreciate you braving the beautiful Angeles weather to make time for us. And good stuff.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Thanks, guys.